Hey, everybody, welcome to the first episode of the Bitcoin Sports Network Golf Fitness Series. I'm super excited to have this conversation with Matt McKay. He's a new friend, but I'm sure to be a longtime friend and a partner of Bitcoin Sports Network events. He came down to El Salvador with us to help out some of our golfers prepare mentally and physically for the golf tournament we had at the Max and Stacy Golf Invitational, which was an amazing success. Everybody had a great time there. And I wanted to get Matt on the show to kind of talk about what he does and his process. He's a PGA professional. He works with a lot of high caliber people and a lot of talent in the golf world down in Florida, helping the youth golfers prepare for more mental focus in their rounds of tournament golf, and also older golfers who are trying to make that next level move into the play for money ranks of the golfing world. So with that, I'd like to welcome you, Matt, to the show. It's so great to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, everyone. I'm Matt McKay. I'm the golf biomechanics and fitness professional at PGA Tour Golf Academy in St. Augustine, Florida, just outside of Jacksonville, south of Jacksonville. So I've been a teaching pro I've been in the industry, I should say, for about 8 years total. I got my kinesiology degree from Purdue University. I was a former baseball player growing up, but through college and after my playing career ended, baseball, switched over to golf and just dove right into it. Like a lot of people, once you make that first really good contact and, a couple great holes out there, you get hooked to the game. So I learned that I could help people get better at golf, improve their goals on the golf course via the fitness and the biomechanics world. So I started working at a chiropractic clinic and a sports performance injury rehab clinic. The owner of the facility was a huge golf guy. He treated a lot of the PGA Tour members at TPC Sawgrass, and he had a golf lab at his facility. So that's kind of where I cut my teeth of learning how to work with golfers, learning about the most common injuries that we see a lot, or ways that, or I should say dysfunctions that can whether lead to injuries or lead to poor performance, ways that the chiropractor would treat the patient, and then I would come in and kind of do the strengthening program to find that balance. Usually injuries will occur if a compensation is coming into play. So having the understanding and the education behind the issue, and then addressing that issue with correct modalities, whether that's, getting someone's hands on you, like some treatment programs, or working with someone like me and doing a stretching program at home to stay limber and to stay supple so you're ready to do your work on the course. So yeah, it's a great career. It's a great job. I love being outside in the sun, and it's led me to great opportunities like this and getting into Bitcoin also.
Awesome. So you mentioned there that you made the transition from baseball over to golf. What about those two swings did you find made it an easier transition?
Yeah, great question. It has positives and negatives, right? There's two sides of the coin. On the positive side, in baseball, you're always used to hitting through the ball, right? Moving towards a target, rotating your hips, getting a lot of power into it. So, growing up doing a lot of tee work and really trying to drive the ball to the back of the cage, that turns into golf because you're used to striking down on the ball. Great for irons. Typically, a lot of baseball players, when they come in, they have a strong attack angle, almost too strong, so deep divots. And usually that path is working a little bit to the left. So with that being said, not without getting too much into it, usually a fade comes into play for baseball players because you're driving down with the ball with irons. Wedges, greenside work, usually a lot of baseball players have soft hands, or at least can control the weight of the club, the weight of a wedge with their hands well, so it can kind of manipulate shots around the greens. Now, on the other side of the coin, like I said, if attack angle becomes steep, that turns into a lot of spin, whether that's backspin or side spin on the ball or a combination of both, which will lead to literally those foul balls going right for a lot of right-handed golfers. So understanding those concepts, and I think that's where the kinesiology and the biomechanics side of things really came into play for me. I could understand, or I could look at how the hips moved in baseball versus golf. There's some systems out there. K-Motion is one that you put sensors on your body and you can measure how much bend, how much side bend, how much rotation happens in a golf swing. So that company's measured the best players in the world, and there's a lot of different, swing catalysts, different ways of measuring that stuff. But starting to really identify, okay, I used to be a baseball player. I know what that person does. I want to go in this direction of more of a golf swing versus a baseball hit. And then kind of just reverse engineering the process to figure out, okay, the pelvis does move differently. Yes, I have to shift onto my lead side early, but then instead of, like I said, hitting or getting that shoulder too involved, I need to use my hips, have a little bit more of the vertical drop so then I can swing and strike the ball correctly. So, yeah, a lot of positives, some growth between it, or I should say along the way. But knowledge is power. You do your research in something, you really get a passion behind it, and you can stand on it because you know the truth behind it.
Yeah, it's definitely true. In baseball, there's no hitting. Well, I mean, in baseball, you can hit a ground ball, you can hit a pop fly, you can hit a home run, you can bunt, right? But in golf, it's pretty much one swing, one form function. Of course, there's different distances you can take the club back or whatnot, but you're definitely not, a pitch shot would not be equivalent to a base hit, a ground ball base hit or something like that.
Another thing too, this has came up more recently with the talk of speed gaining in golf. Um, you know, Aaron Judge isn't mad if he hits a 400 yard or 400-foot home run or a 440-foot home run. It's all over the fence. In golf, distance control is still huge, right? So just because I'm hitting it farther, that's not going to be a direct correlation to well, you get to the hole closer, so there is some mathematic correlation. But just because I'm hitting my 8-iron 170 all of a sudden versus maybe 155, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to be a better golfer. I'm getting the ball in the hole sooner. So again, it's like, yeah, we want to improve, we want to go, 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 but also we need to know what our goals are.
Yeah, I've always found golf to be one of those sports where you can actually hit the ball too good. Like what you're talking about. You want to hit a 155 shot and you end up hitting a 170 shot, and you're like, what happened? And you're like, oh, you hit a perfect swing. Like that's the perfect swing. That's how far it should go. You're terrible. You suck. So you hit it 155. But if you were good, you would hit it 170 every
Yeah.
time.
Or those ones that you just pierce and it goes right through the wind, and you're like, how is that possible? The fan's right in my face. But again, a well-struck ball will penetrate through the wind. Ask Tom Watson.
Yeah, I heard a line from Tiger Woods. He had said something similar when people were asking him about the wind, and he said, "If you hit a good golf shot, the wind doesn't come into play at all.
That's right.
If
That's
you get
right.
a good
Yeah.
backspin on it or lack of spin on it, that ball's going to fly pretty much straight anyway." One last question on the golf or on the baseball thing that I always think about is, golf is one of the only sports where it's proactive, right? Like it's not a reactionary sport like baseball is. But with baseball, when you have your bat in your hand, your club, quote unquote, is already at the top of your swing. How do you think about that transition between, you have somebody who's got a super short swing like John Rahm, or you have somebody who's got like a super long swing like, Dustin Johnson, or you have somebody who's got like a really posy swing at the top like Hideki Matsuyama, right? Like, how do you think about that transition? Because I think like when you're talking about that idea of a baseball player coming over the top and trying to get to that lateral turn, that power there, it
Yes.
sometimes happens because the shoulders and the hips aren't lined up appropriately at the top of the swing. So how do you relate that to people who are super athletic, who think like they can just come out and figure out golf really easy because know how to hit balls and they have good hand-eye coordination, but their swing is either really snappy for a hook or over the top that gives that big slice? How do you think about the top of the golf swing?
Yeah, I think of the top of the golf swing as the trail side or just the body and the club unit loaded correctly. So starting with the correct grip, everyone's, if we're going interlock, overlap, doesn't matter, but just putting it in the right places in your fingers, that'll allow the wrist to do its work naturally. So you can swing on an easier swing plane from there. So once we have a good grip establishment, a little bit of biomechanics will come into play. I want to coil into my trail leg. So that's going to be the foot or the ankle, as well as the trail hip. And when I do that, I'm probably going to get around 40, 45 degrees of rotation into that hip, but that's going to allow my upper body to get my back to the target. So can I get my back to the target with having a long arm? It doesn't have to be straight or stiff, but a long arm where then I'm going to set that club with a good wrist angle at the top. So I will do some pause drills with some of my students, and I like to do it on occasion at the range just to try to work on swing awareness or swing plane awareness for that matter. So technically, if you have a good grip, by P2, you should already be, the club unit should be loaded. So I think a little bit of education goes into that, and then that feeling of what that load is. Now, whether that load's felt in the hands, some people feel it in their body or in their hip of, the style of player. But how can you feel what loaded is? Because once you're loaded, then yeah, that's the top. You don't need to go further. You don't sometimes the analogy of if I have a hammer and a nail, I don't need to take it a foot back to hit it. A strong strike will get it down if it's precise with it. So to connect that to baseball, you see so many different batting stances, right? Kevin Youkilis, he used to hold the bat like a Japanese guy. James Frank or someone Franco. Anyways, you'll see all these crazy stance, but the idea of that is they want to feel the mass of the club, mass of the bat in their hands. That way they can just turn and really get that good whip. So it's kind of similar of getting it to the top of the swing in golf, but again, it all comes down to either club face or barrel awareness for the two sports.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know we dove into this part of the conversation maybe a little bit earlier than we initially thought that we might, but I get so interested in this type of stuff because this is what makes you a better golfer. You mentioned a P2 position. What are there different when you're teaching? Do you look at the swing in different? Is P for part? Is there different parts of the swing that you're referring to? Can you explain that?
Essentially, yes. Yeah. So depends if you want to look at if you want to call address P1 or P0. But yeah, essentially it would be taking the club back where the club is parallel to the ground would be position one. P2 would be when the lead arm is parallel to the ground. You're going to continue to work up to the top of the swing, and then it's a reverse pattern on the way down through impact, post impact, where the trail arm is post impact parallel to the ground. That would be probably again P7 or P8. You can get into the specifics. Some coaches do decimals with it, and then essentially full swing would be either P9 or P10, depending if you start at 0 or start at 1. So just that initial takeaway, we could call that. We see a lot of players on tour. It's probably taken off. I feel like Justin Thomas was one of the first ones to really start doing it, where they'll take the club back and actually look at the club face when it's pointed back. So when the camera's down the line, you can see where their club angle is. And that face angle should match their spine angle. Now, if a player is playing a certain shot, they may want it a little bit open or a little bit closed to that spine angle. But that's a general point of reference is when we take the club back, and it's not just moving the arms, it's rotating the body to get it there. So your arms are still long, but you're moving your body to get to that position. So the idea is if you can win the first 2 feet of your backswing, your swing should be ready to go for the rest of the time. And that's where the repetitions, the practice, ability to adjust if you have an uneven lie, things of that matter really come in for the pros.
So what you're saying is to hit a perfect golf swing, you need 10 perfect positions throughout that swing.
If you're Bryson DeChambeau, yes, absolutely. If you're the amateur, let's focus on maybe 3 or 4, right? The rest will work its way out.
At the top of that backswing, then, do you usually have your students think about the pause at the top, or think about the transition down, or think about one? Like they always say in a golf swing, when you're swinging it, when you're finally ready to go, you should only have one thought in your head at a maximum. Unless you're Dustin Johnson, then you might have half the thought in your head. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
How do you think through that with your students on making sure that when you get to the top of the backswing, you're in a fairly good position to be able to come back down with that angle of attack and give yourself the best opportunity at a shot that's not, that doesn't have a huge dispersion?
Yes. So I like doing maybe get to the top pauses in front of a mirror, just so the player can start to get a little bit of body awareness with club awareness, combining those two. So our feel versus real, where is the top of my backswing? A lot of people, when they watch themselves on video for the first time, they're like, who's that guy? Or who's that girl? Who's that lady? Because it looks completely different than what they're perceiving they're doing. So I like to do a lot of those positionings, whether it's down the line. So it would be kind of this position, get to the top and look, where's your wrist, where's your body in relation, or where's the club in relation to your body, and then doing it face on as well and seeing those positions. For the actual, or like if we're on the driving range talking about it, I'm a big fan of talking about getting pressure on the lead side early. Again, with the biomechanics side of things, there's a lot of different data regarding ground force reaction. Smart to Move is a company that's probably one of the best out there. And they measure not just where you're loading your feet, but also the lateral force, the vertical force, and then the rotary force of both legs. So you can kind of put that together and kind of understand how the pelvis moves in that sense. So what we see is the best players in the world, they start to get pressure on their lead side before the club even reaches the top or the transition. The top would be considered when the hands move direction. So up and then down, right? So that would be the top, the freeze frame right before the hands descend down. So the best players in the world are using their lead side. Now, whether you want to argue that it's the glute, it's the core, the oblique chain, sling, the fascial system, doesn't matter. All that you need to know is getting pressure on your lead side by driving your foot into the ground. That'll change the direction of the club. So practicing like a med ball toss is a great example of doing that. I do a lot of pitch work with my students. So get, your sand wedge, go out and stand on your lead leg, kind of prop your trail foot back and just kind of do some hip height to hip height swings. And you feel how you can use that left leg to create the swing arc. Big thing with that, and a lot of times students will either thin it or catch it heavy. The reason for that is because if they're catching it heavy, they're not getting on that lead side. They're just dipping and hanging back. So we kind of drop kick it. If we're standing up too soon, that's when we see more of the thinning of the shot. But being able to, I guess, coordinate again the body movement with the club movement of that lead leg, the brain will naturally figure out what the pelvis has to do, how you need to interact with the ground to then bottom out the club correctly. And then with a pitch shot, we're talking about maybe 20 to 30 yards. Easy to go practice that, whether that's in your backyard or you go to your local club or course, go to their short game area, get you a little bucket of balls or a shag bag, and just put 10 or 15 on the ground and just work on that smooth pitching motion. I find that's a great way, again, of coordinating the lead hip, but then also just body awareness, because you're basically going to be doing a long arm, kind of a Jason Day style pitch shot. He's pretty good at that stuff, even with his back injuries over the year. But he's a fantastic example to look for what I'm talking about. Except I don't know if you'll find a video of him doing it on one leg, but essentially that's what we're looking for. And then once you do it one leg for, 5 or 6, then bring 2 into play and kind of bounce back and forth with that. I find it's really good if someone's struggling with, ball striking or, just making a crisp strike, ball first, then turf second strike.
Kind of on that last subject of the backswing, one of the things I'm really excited about this series with you and with golf and fitness is that this is going to be a progression of conversations that we'll have over the course of several months. And I'm still putting together my studio out in the garage where I have a golf simulator set up and some workout equipment down there. So we'll be able to get down into the gym, basically into a golf training facility, and really be able to show kind of some of these motions and movements that we're talking about. And hopefully you'll be able to correct my swing. But in general, hopefully we'll be able to correct thousands of other people's golf swing in the Bitcoin space. So as Bitcoin Sports Network continues to produce these golf tournaments in the Bitcoin community, that all of our golf game will start elevating and our golf scores will stop dropping, which I'm really, really excited about. And kind of on that topic of that backswing transition, back injuries is a huge component to golf, and it's really hard to say where the longevity will come from. Everybody's got their own style of golf swing. Everybody's body is different. Everybody's flexibility is different, and muscular strength is different, and that's going to affect how ultimately an individual's golf swing, kind of how they dial in their own swing. You have somebody out there like Chad Wolf, right? Who's just like craziest golf swing you've ever seen on tour. How he ever makes this thing usable, because he's got that twitch at the beginning and then he almost brings the club straight up. You know who Chad Wolf is?
I don't actually. I'm surprised I don't. I know
I hope
Jared
his name's Chad Wolf. Otherwise, I'm getting his name wrong. People will correct me if I'm wrong. I do believe his last name is Wolf, though. He's a younger guy. Matt Wolf.
Matt Wolf, yes.
Matt Wolf.
And he's
Okay.
on field now. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And he came up through the ranks. He was on the tour. I think he won an event or two in his first
Yeah,
or
he won
second
the 3M.
season.
He won the Minnesota one. I think their inaugural year. Blew him out. It was awesome. Yeah, he's a really interesting story. I don't mean to cut you off, but he's an athlete first type player. His kind of background's, I'd say, well documented through George Gankis. He's a swing coach out of California, and he's kind of a new age guy, if I could use that term, but great brain. But again, he's kind of dissected things and looked at what's important. What's the most important thing is getting the club in a good position at the top and then being an athlete and striking the ball and then trying to figure it out from there. He said many, many times with his juniors, and I agree with it. When you've got a young player, let them learn how to blast it down the fairway. Let them learn how to, pick up the speeds, get the RPMs going, because you can always hone it back in. Whether that's honing in the path of the club or the aggression from the top of the swing, but just let them get after it. And I think that's why junior golfers should play other sports, should do other things, even if it's, kicking a soccer ball around. Baseball, obviously, I can vouch for that, but hockey, lacrosse, all these are great sports because you're learning how to transfer your energy from one side of the body to the other. And I think golf can sometimes, if we're trying to do something, we're not going to be as athletic. We're not going to keep that suppleness. So it's easy to be, stuck in a straight jacket trying to make a swing. And next thing you know, you're hanging back on your backside because you're afraid to do too much movement. And going back to Matt Wolf, he was a soccer player. So his footwork is a big component to his golf swing. And when you start really working into the ground, that's when you can really get some pelvis movement, some arm swing movement, because the pelvis is we're trying to swing the arms with the body. And then if you can time up where your plane is and then your club face position, and again, that'll go back to grip, then it's just a matter of rinse and repeat and being confident that you're going to be able to repeat that swing.
Yeah, I like what you said there about the youth golfers being able to play more than just golf.
Hmm.
Because it seems like one of the challenges that golfers have is when you pigeonhole yourself into training one particular sport, your body's muscle structure will compensate for that one sport. And because golf is very one-way lateral, typically
Yep.
if you're a right-handed player, your right side becomes your left side becomes very strong and your right side becomes very weak, right? Because you got your left arm as that lead arm coming through and that power. So all of your rotational energy and your abdominal muscles are all focusing on that core position through that one impact. But you completely miss the other side of the swing, which is what I think is so cool that they do at the PGA Championship on the practice rounds. Was it Wednesday, where on the hole 16 or hole 17, they do the opposite hand, close to the pin, but you got to go, if you're righty, you got to go lefty. And if you're lefty, you got to go righty. And it's incredible to see these guys be able to swing a golf club almost the same on their right side as their left side.
Totally. Totally. It's yeah, giving someone the opposite club and you can watch their brain starting to go through it like, okay, this is different. The spine tilt or my lateral tilt is different, but it's the same mechanic. So it may take one or two reps to kind of groove it out, but yeah, those guys are pretty darn good with it. We had a client at the chiropractic clinic. He was a left-handed golfer, but he had told me he had broke par many times playing right-handed. And it was just like that's incredible to me. But again, once you understand it, and I think these guys, they know how to score, they know how to get the ball in the hole, then it's like, okay, this is chess, not checkers type deal for that. But
Yeah,
go ahead.
I don't know. I'm not in that boat. I tried it. I went and got like a left-handed 7-iron,
Oh,
just so I
cool.
could start taking some, because they say who it was Freddie Couples or it could have been Arnold Palmer or one of those guys. They were talking about how if you want to keep your structure even on both sides, if you're
Mhm.
taking 100 golf swings on the right
Right.
side, you should take 100 golf swings on the left side too. And
100%.
one of the things where I notice it actually does help is in my flexibility, right? Because again, the flexibility side of because you have all that power coming through. So naturally, as you follow through, you're going to get that stretch on one side of your body, but the other side of your body is going to stay very compact. And so when I would take a 7-iron and go lefty with it, First of all, it was barely take the club back. It was like watching a 3-year-old girl throw a baseball, right? Who's never thrown a baseball before. It's like the most unawkward. No, on the other side, you get behind it, you turn your hips, you point, you throw. It's super comfortable. You could do it with your eyes closed. I mean, you could
Right.
spin around dizzy. Doesn't matter. You can do it. Try to go the other way with it, and then all of a sudden, I don't know. I don't have the brain synapses for that. I can't. My body won't do that stuff. But getting that stretch with a golf club going the other way, I always feel better. My back doesn't hurt as much at the end of the day.
100%. I've come across a couple research paper where they talk about that in detail when they talk about back injuries, how golf is probably the number one asymmetric sport out there because you're not changing directions. You're always making the same motion. And then on top of that, you're adding bend and you're adding ball striking in the ground, friction going through your body. So if you have a weak chain, whether that's your elbow, your wrist, your lower back, you're going to feel that, especially after reps on reps. And, if you're a dedicated golfer, the reps on the range, then on the course. I'm a super speed level 3 certified instructor.
What does that
And
mean?
yeah, so super speed is one of the main training systems for increasing your swing speed. I actually have one right here in my bag. So this is what I use to warm up. It just has weight on the end of it, but it's essentially a driver shaft. They have a system where it's 3 different weighted clubs. There's another one, I believe, called ripsticks where you change out the weight in there, but I find that these are easier. I just pull out a new club like an 8-iron from a 5-iron. They're completely different, right? They're going to have different uses, but they are huge advocates of swinging bilaterally. So in their swing training, you'll make 5 swings right-handed and then you go left-handed with it. And they have different choreography like step change where it's not necessarily Happy Gilmore, but think about like stepping into it or like step back, step forward so you can create more momentum. Essentially, it's a neurological training system. It's not necessarily building your muscular strength, but it's allowing the synapses for your brain body connection to fire faster. But the trick behind it that not too many people, I think, notice is swing speed is dictated on how well you can slow down your body. I can swing super fast, but if I can't coordinate slowing down my pelvis to then transfer the energy to my upper body, to then transfer the energy through the club unit to the ball, I'm not going to be increasing swing speed. Think of like cracking a whip. You want to really maximize that whipping effect. So, like to you're saying, the synapses, yeah, start swinging left-handed. What I've noticed when I do that, I actually turn further on my right leg, which is my trail leg in my real swing. So I've got a more full swing. So it allows me to get deeper into my backswing when I play golf. And then also because you're learning how to load your quote backswing as a left-handed golfer on your left leg, I feel like I get better hip rotation on my lead leg because I'm trying to get to that position. If we think about when we get through impact, one, a lot of us will look up right away. We may not complete our finish, right? We peek up, or who knows, our elbows break down, so we don't complete that rotation. So it adds benefits to both sides. But yeah, that deceleration factor is huge. Think about someone kicking a field goal, in the Super Bowl this weekend. They have to plant their left foot to then drive their right foot through it. Same thing in golf. Getting that lead foot down, that establishes that connection. So if you watch like Scotty Scheffler hitting an iron at impact, if you freeze it, you could draw a line from his lead shoulder through the club to his lead foot. And it's almost like he's hitting into a wall because he's decelerated to allow the club to then accelerate through impact position.
Let's bring this conversation into a little bit more of a real world past scenario at the Max and Stacy Invitational. Trying to bring some of these concepts into a real world playing situation, especially on such a hilly and target making course that is the beast of El Encanto. So how did you, after you played your practice round, how did you process your how you wanted to attack the course for the Saturday round, for the tournament round?
Yeah, definitely a course where the practice round was vital. Some of the holes seem to be right in front of you. You could kind of say, okay, with the tee location, maybe it's a 400 or a 360-yard hole. Doesn't look too challenging. But then you get up there and you notice, oh, I didn't notice that, everything slopes down to this one area of the fairway, and then there's trees right next to it. Or in classic die design fashion, putting a bunker in the middle of nowhere where you wouldn't know that that's there off the tee unless you really focused on it. And then yeah, some of those tee lines are, you have to be a little aggressive, and that's the game of golf sometimes, knowing when you can bite a little bit more off than what you should. So I'd say in the practice round was a little bit more, took it like a real tournament round of how can I strategically work my way around this golf course. And then once you finish the hole, you can always turn back around and look and feel like, oh, wow, the tee box is there and I hit it to here. Well, why didn't I just take it over that tree line and I could land it and there's, a ton of room. So talking to a few of the guys, Patrick Lowry, I think he had the ultimate tee line in his mind. So he gave a little bit of a teach in between rounds. So, talking to fellow competitors. But yeah, just having the confidence of seeing the course firsthand is huge for that. Again, seeing where your landing zones are. Because from the tee, Pete Dye does a great visual trick of like, it looks like you're trying to put it, on a welcome mat out there. But you get out there and you're like, oh, this is, a whole gym facility is worth. It just didn't look like it because it's downsloped, you know?
Yeah, I was people would ask, how did you what do you if I'm a 15 handicapper, what do you think I'm going to shoot? And I was like, you're not going to break 90. Like you're going to shoot over 100. And it was like, okay, what if I'm a 2 handicapper? What am I going to shoot? And I'm like, an 85. More than likely, without seeing the golf course, you're going to shoot high. For just like you were saying, there's so many opportunities on that golf course to score, and so much mind games going on with, like you're saying, the different slopes, the change in fairway to tee box fluctuations, the blind shots that if you hit the ball over 280 yards off the tee, you're almost forced to hit the blind shot because the shot that you would be choosing instead is like a 180-yard shot that doesn't really help you on that hole. There's a lot of par fives that are dog legs on that golf course that are really tricky. The par fours are probably between 320 to 380 yards. So very gettable, but there's not a single flat spot on the course. So kind of on that flat spot thing. So one of the biggest challenges I see with golfers trying to go from your mid double digit handicaps, like your 15s, down to your single digit handicaps, like even your 9, is understanding ball position to slope angle of the ground. Is the ball above my feet? Is it below my feet? How far is it above or below my feet? Is it an uphill lie? Is it a downhill lie? Because a lot of people don't think about the fact that if the ball is above your feet, chances are your ball has a higher chance of going left. If it's below your feet, your ball has a higher chance of going right. And then vice versa. If the ball is on an uphill slope, the ball has a higher proclivity of drawing left versus drawing right. One of the things I always talk to people about is like what you just did right there, getting that shoulder angle, hip angle in line with the ground. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think greenside shots are huge for that as well. Full swings, of course, but the ground is going to dictate how our pelvis and how our bodies are already aligned. So if we're used to practicing on a flat tee line, yeah, it's going to be no problem to set up with just a little bit of side bend naturally, hopefully, and you're able to make that nice swing. Well, if the slope gets, say my lead foot's higher than my trail foot, that's already going to put me in this more of a drastic side bend. So then my swing arc, the bottom of it would probably hit the ground fat before the ball. So then making that adjustment, depending on the club selection, but if we're again talking about a wedge or something inside 100 yards, put the ball back in your stance a little bit. Maybe take one more club, maybe get more loft on your club because of that, right? So the ball's further back. You're naturally going to strike down on it just a little bit steeper because of that. And then that's why we change the loft of the club. And then vice versa. If it's the opposite direction, you're already going to be hitting down upon it. So you don't need as much loft, or you're going to be adding dynamic loft to it, I should say. So then making that adjustment with your club selection, and then trusting that you're just going to make a smooth swing with that. I think that's a big factor too. Doing your pre-shot routine, if we could call it that, but doing your due diligence and your research before you go into the shot, and then executing the shot because, yeah, you did your checks and balances. Now, of course, practice is going to be a big part of that as well. Getting some reps in and just being comfy of not making a chunk. again, especially green side in that nature with the wedge with a sharp leading edge. But yeah, making that little adjustments, ball position back a little bit, maybe we go forward a little bit, but still just trusting where the bottom of the arc is going to end up at.
So, what was your biggest miss at the El Encanto golf tournament? What would you say was your biggest struggle with the golf course?
Oh, okay. Struggle with the golf course. To say my biggest miss was I had a rental set, right? So the shafts were just not the iron shafts and the driver for that matter, but they were just not as quite rebar as what I'm used to. So in the practice round, we're having fun with that. I was able to make a nice smooth swing, and the club would just stay back a little bit because of the swing speed, and it was just a nice little fade. In the tournament, I think I was, a little excited, so I was getting through it a little bit more. So the poles, not necessarily pole, but it wasn't fading back online or back to the target for me. So that was kind of the miss for out there, and that's just being in competition, being a little excited for everything. Um, and then on the course, I think it's a good question, but I think trusting the tee lines on some of the shots were challenging. Like hole three, that par three, you could just barely see the flag for how it was around the corner. Hole
Mhm.
four, blind shot. I think it was, what is it, eight? It's a simple shot, but blind shot. The waterfall's up there on the right of the green. So just understanding those lines, but also a big part of that too is the slope of the fairway. So like on
Mhm.
eight, for example, your line's kind of a block to the right, but as long as it hits turf and doesn't catch the cart path, you might be in the center of the fairway or even the left side of the fairway, classic Pete Dye designs. So I'd say trusting the lines was the biggest thing for me. I love that it was warm out, 80 degrees, sunny, and we had a little bit of elevation. So me going into that, I knew I didn't have to overpower the golf course. I'm naturally going to get the distance or get my summer numbers with it being warm out. The ball is going to compress a little bit more. My body's going to move a little bit more easy. The sun down there obviously is a big part of that too. That's a little bit of quantum health, but high UV levels are really going to allow us to be, present and allow our body to connect. Um, but yeah, a little bit of elevation. I think it's around 2,000, 2,500, right around there. They say a full club or, 10 to 12 yards at Denver, mile high. So about half of that. So I was just like, all right, let's just make a smooth swing and trust that it's going to work out. And it did for the most part.
Cool. On that subject, and behind you there, I see some awards from the tournament. You have two driver and 3 wood Bitcoin club head covers, and also a wedge back there that's got a pretty cool pattern on it. I'm wondering if you could talk us through the shot that won you that award.
Absolutely. Yeah, I could talk about that for sure. Um, so it was the first hole of the day actually for us. Par 3 14th. I think it was 120 or 125. So that's honestly a perfect number for my 52-degree wedge. So first swing of the day worked out pretty great, and it was right on the flag the whole time. Landed right by the pitch mark, and it's one of those. It's first of the day, so you write your name on the card, you stick it in close, and you're like, I hope it holds, but it's probably not going to hold. There's going to be what 71 other players or whatever it was coming through. So you kind of like get excited, but you don't want to hold your breath. You don't want to count your chickens too early, right? And then because that was our first hole we started on when we came up of 13 to come back around to it, I'm kind of peeking up before we even finished 13 just to kind of look at it. And yeah, it looked pretty tight or looked familiar to when we left the hole. And yeah, it stayed right there. So yeah, amazing wedge. I know we've talked about it, and you want me to take it out and play with it every day, but no, it's going to stay in the bag. This is a commemorative item. Amazing stamp job with it. Having the Max and Stacy logo on it, and the year is, it's a keepsake for sure. And it was awesome. I was able to bring it back. I didn't have to do anything with it. I was just able to bring it back in my carry-on. No one said anything in El Salvador. I thought I was going to maybe have to break it and then reshaft it when I get back in, but yeah, there's no problem with that. And then yeah,
Very cool.
the head covers are awesome. And fun story about this, the first day that I got back, or the first day that I got to the course after I got back, so not work, but just to go practice on my own, I'm pulling out my clubs from my car and I'm changing out the head covers. And I'd say 30 seconds after I do that, a guy pulls up in a Tesla and he's like, "Hey, where'd you get those Bitcoin head covers? Those are sweet." So, of course, I told him, and he was like asking more about the tournament, and that led to me giving him my business card, and now I've got a new student from it. So, the investment is paying off.
I actually got those club head covers made from a guy called 21 Hodl, and he does all custom embroideries of Bitcoin type golf apparel. And then the club I designed, and then I worked with a machinist who has a laser engraving machine. And so he was able to laser engrave. He's an artist, obviously, because the art that I sent him was not nearly as pretty as what ended up on the clubs there. But yeah, he was able to use our design and then make it into there. And so you got the El Salvador volcanoes and then the Bitcoin kind of as, rocks being thrown out of the volcano for Bitcoin mining in El Salvador. And then kind of a representation of the island green, the hole-in-one challenge hole.
Absolutely.
As the 16th hole at El Encanto, that if somebody would have won one whole Bitcoin. But instead, that person won a club just like yours in the same driver and 3-wood cover. Now, I noticed your putter, you got a putter head cover too, but you have a different style putter. And so that was always a big.
Yeah, that's the only difference. So I've got a DS72, a PLD ping, and it's more of a mallet style. So I could fit the black one. It's a black head cover, but it's more of blade style. But to be honest, I love the white and the black combo of the head covers that I got going in the bag. So I'm sure this white will last maybe one more season. So I'll keep it fresh in the spare bedroom for the time being, and then it'll get in the bag soon.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it. I always feel like a golfer will change his putter before he changes almost anything else in the bag. So I'm sure you have a couple of
Not
other.
if you get fitted. Not if you come to PGA Tour Golf Academy and go through Sam Putt Lab with us. You will not need to change your putter because you'll know for a fact that your putter's the best thing for you.
That'll be another conversation that we get into because as I got deeper and deeper down the golf rabbit hole, I realized that not all putters are made the same and they're not all weighted the same. And I feel like, what you're talking about for getting a putter fitted for you, it's really important to understand what your natural putting swing is so that you know where the weight on that putter head should be so that when you come back to impact, that it's square. Because you see some people with so many putters that they love the putter that they have, but they push everything or they pull everything because that weight just doesn't match their club head swing. And so we could talk about how to find where your balance point is on your putter by, balancing it basically and seeing how it all.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to go into details of that. That's kind of like not biomechanics side of things, but a little bit of the numbers crunch that I can, kind of get down with. And it's a putt, so it's not like there's a lot of dynamics going into it. It's, a 3-year-old can roll a putt and you could do a diagnosis on them. Swing weight is huge for putters. That'll dictate where you're hitting it on the face a lot. And I think a lot of us don't think about it, but a toe strike is going to give it a little bit of gear effect to the ball. So the ball's not necessarily going to roll end over end to start with. It might have a little bit of hook spin so it goes further. What I've seen with myself and with students, we all have a certain swing pattern, full swing and with the putter. So for example, with the putter, if I'm one who tends to push it a little bit, I'll learn to close the face at impact because I'm tired of missing it to the right of the hole. So understanding what your tendencies are, where you're hitting it on the face, and a big part of that too is going to be the lie angle of the putter. I think that may be another underlooked aspect because if the toe is up on the putter, when you bring it back to impact or square to your eyes, it may be closing or staying open and you're dragging it through a little bit. That's something to watch. Anyone listening, when you watch PGA Tour, and especially when they do those zoom ins to the putts, whether it's behind or the hole looking at it, that putter is flush to the ground. Only a few players will you see with the toe up a little bit. Tony Finau's one who, I'm not one to point the finger, but a lot of people say if he could, roll more putts in, he'd play better. But look at Scotty, look at Rory, look at Xander. Xander's putter is flush on the ground. His angles for his putter for when he putts are fantastic, and that's the moneymaker. That's the moneymaker whether you're playing in a PGA Tour event, playing in a local event, or playing in a Bitcoin scramble when you need to make putts to get on the board.
Cool. Yeah. On that kind of professional side, it's Thursday. Waste management tournament starts today. You got any favorites that you're looking for? What are your thoughts on this week's tournament?
Yeah, yeah. I always look at the odds, so I kind of play that into things. I think Scotty's obviously going to have a great week. He's won here before. He got the rust off last week. But Hideki Matsuyama, again, one of the guys towards the top, but already had a great season. He's won here at the event, played well here. It's warm. He's going to be able to hit it far and wedge it in close. And what's always interesting about him is he'll always have one or two like berserk nuclear rounds where he goes 63, 64 or something. But then he'll sneak one in with a 70, 71. So, and what I've noticed for those, his low rounds, he doesn't hit as many greens, but he wedges it. He chips it really close or maybe chips one or two in, and that keeps the momentum of the round going. So I'd say first pick would be Hideki Matsuyama. Second, more of a sleeper pick, Nick Taylor. Canadian, I think last year lost in the playoff here. Believe he won earlier in the year at Sony, or maybe he didn't win, but he was close. That's when the week when we were in El Salvador, so I didn't follow that week as close. But he's trending. Great horses for courses guy. TPC Scottsdale, because it's in the desert, you know where the fairway is. There's not much rough out there. It's green or it's sand. So for those visual players, once you like the course, and a lot of those guys say they can put the white noise or, censor out the crowd so it doesn't bug them as much. But Nick Taylor would be my second pick. And then if I went super dark horse, Charlie Hoffman. Charlie
Really?
Hoffman. Yeah, Charlie Hoffman, waste management, ambassador for many years. He had a couple good events earlier in the season already. He's an older guy, but he's won here at the course. He plays well at the course, and he's healthy right now. Over the last offseason, he's worked hard to get his body back in shape. There's a couple of really good videos that TPI put on. One thing that he was struggling with was he had a lower back injury for the longest time. Getting up there in age, probably chasing a little bit of speed, trying to stay, with the younger guys, and, got a little banged up by it. Also, playing 25 events, 30 events a year, you're going to have those, wear and tears, and doing it for 20 years. But what they found out, and it's a great thing with him and Mark Blackburn, his coach, his grip changed. His grip got weaker over the course of a season or two because he wasn't rotating as much. So if he had his same old grip of a stronger grip, he was hooking it. He was smother hooking it. And that's tough to do when you're playing on tour and there's galleries around you and X, Y, and Z, right? So by default, his grip kept getting weaker and weaker. But because they've gone to TPI, Titleist Performance Institute, and done the back checking, run the data, and looked at not just his body numbers, but his grip strength, essentially, they found data when he was hitting it well 4 or 5 years ago. His grip was, I think it was like 20 or 30 degrees stronger than what it currently was. And then they go through the whole series. The coach is like, yes, I knew it was your grip. It wasn't your body, blah, blah, blah. And then by the end of the videos, he's striping it and he looks like the most confident guy that you've seen, AKA any golfer who feels good about their game, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think he could kind of be a little sneaky pick. Now, is he going to win? Maybe not, but a great top 10 finish is fantastic for these guys.
Okay. Okay. I like it. One of my always, and I know this seems almost cliche, but Ricky Fowler is always one of the players I love seeing at the Waste Management Tour.
Yeah.
I wish he could play better on the weekends as he does on a Thursday, Friday. Like I would be completely, it would be normal for me to see him at the end of today or the end of Friday at like in the lead by 4 or 5 strokes.
Mm-hmm.
He's so good when the pressure is off. But when that pressure ratchets up for a Saturday, Sunday finish, especially if he's close to the leaderboard, there's always some, you were talking a little bit about with that tournament energy, like almost like the tournament jitters, if you will. And I don't want to spend, we've almost been on the call here for about an hour, and I want to leave stuff for more of our episodes to come here. But maybe as a final thought, coming into a tournament like Waste Management, where it is so flat, where it's so visible, where they have the grandstand set up and you have that outside energy, noise, celebration, excitement happening. How do you bring it all back to focus on that one shot at hand to make sure that you don't give yourself a blow up hole and throw yourself out of the tournament on day one?
Yeah. For the guys playing the Waste Management, having a great caddy is huge for that. A guy that you can talk to, kind of take your mind off things. And your caddy's your friend out there, right? He travels with you all year, so he knows what triggers you. He knows what gets you going. So some guys, take their mind completely off golf, talk sports. So talk about the Luka Doncic trade. Talk about, I've heard guys telling jokes on the golf course of just to try to get their mind off things. So I think having a good caddy to kind of bring you back in or to know when to, either push your button and say, all right, let's step up. Let's show all these fans came out here for you. Let's do something with it. But then there's, some players that need to be a little bit more of that even keel, mindset with it. I think another thing too is the juice. Coaches have called it the juice when you get that adrenaline rush. So when you step onto 16, you go through that Coliseum and everyone's on top of you. Oh my gosh, they've shown with like the whoops or something, heart rate's going to go up. So players know that. They are aware of that, especially on like first tees when they naturally have that juice. They're not needing to swing after it hard. So I think then it goes back to the player just to trust his process. Go through his pre-shot routine. A lot of players have a trigger, whether they're grabbing their shirt, whether it's the Velcro, whether it's a hat thing. But again, these little triggers, it's a little bit of the psychology thing that gets them focused. Annika Sorensen talked about what prep box and play box, two different kind of mindsets to step into. So you go through your pre-shot routine, you find your intermediate target, a foot or two in front of your ball, and you just kind of trust that swing at that point. And some guys can do it better than others. And I think, yeah, the guys that can rile up the crowds like a Minwoo Lee, even Wyndham's Ricky plays to the crowd. He's not intimidated by a crowd like that, but at the same time, you still got to perform, right? So
Yeah.
whether the crowd's there or not, he still could miss a shot. But I think every player is a little bit different. Their DNAs feeds into that. But yeah, it'll be exciting to see how things finish out this week.
Well, cool. Yeah, I'm really excited to see how it finishes out. In golf, it could be the person that you'd never heard of before who's actually going to make their come through event and break out and win this thing.
Yeah,
So,
a lot of
wait.
guys live in Scottsdale, so a lot of the guys are familiar with this course. You see a lot of guys, that are continually, if they've played well in the past, they'll play that well there again. But it's a TPC course. A lot of TPCs are similar builds. But yeah, a lot of guys are local in Scottsdale, so they could maybe get a couple reps. So you might see a sneaky, a Zach Blair come up the leaderboard. Or I'm trying to think who else. I can't think of anything on top of my head right now, but some younger guys, essentially, some Corn Ferry guys. We're like, who? Who's that? Or Corn Ferry
Yeah,
last.
you got some people in the field that haven't heard of for a while, like Camila Villegas is
That's
in the
right.
field. It's good to see that Jordan Spieth is back in the field. He hasn't been playing particularly well the last few seasons, so he was
Yeah.
my guy. Like when I went to go down to Colonial down in Dallas and watch him play, like I followed him around the entire week. He was going on that 2 or 3 year just stint of just destroying everybody, and they were like, "He's the white Tiger Woods. He's going to be the greatest. He's on track to do all these things." And
Right.
then like so many other things happen in golf. We'll talk about this on another episode, but how to manage the mind games that we play on ourselves and creating false expectations and false stressful situations that don't really exist. With like Jordan Spieth, he was doing great when he was single, right? Then he got a girlfriend,
Oh,
and he got engaged, then he got married, then he had a kid, and you could just see his game just go don't, down, 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 down. So
and also to that point, and I'm not saying this has to do with him, but you get more success, your time goes in different places, right? So he's doing
yeah,
AT&T commercials. He's doing Under Armour gigs. He's doing more clinics. And then also, again, this isn't at him at all, but more money's coming in. So I don't know if that makes you less hungry of a golfer at some point. And I know for someone like that, he wants to play for the wins and he plays for, the tradition and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's their profession, right? So it's like the guy signing the big contract in a major league sport. The next year, he might not have that same grit in him to kind of push through and stay on the range a little bit longer and get that extra treatment once or twice a week. So yeah, he had that weird ulnar wrist injury, so I hope he can bounce back from that. I heard him talking the other day. Right now, he's thinking the long game. He's saying, it's like wet cement right now. I'm trying to make my foundation nice, so in a year or two, or he doesn't care in the next 2 or 3 years. He wants to have longevity for the next 10, and that's a true golfer's mindset. So that was really refreshing to hear him say that.
yeah. And I use him as an example, not as the focal point in that, because that happens to so many professional golfers where, like you're saying, when the world around you just gets so much more exciting and you just got all these things going on around you, like how do you bring the focus back to, okay, I'm on the golf course now. I got to hit this shot well before I can hit the next shot well, and how to bring it all back in focus
Right.
and kind of, I guess, just forget about everything else. So I'd really like to have those conversations with you. in
Yeah,
future
those are
conversations.
those are fun conversations for sure. I've played those games many times with myself and with some of our players, and some days there's no secret sauce to it. It just happens. You start rolling with it. You kind of find the zone, so to speak, and other days you're just dying to see what that looks like or feels like. So
Yeah,
yeah, how do you make those triggers?
it's the slogan I came up with several years ago that it still holds true, and it's be careful what you think. The golf ball can hear you.
I like that. Yeah, yeah. It might know a little bit, huh?
So it's like you've been hitting great shots all day. Now all of a sudden there's a lake in front of you, and you're like, don't hit it in the lake. So of course you're going to hit it in a lake. Or, you got a perfect straight line to the green, 160 yards, but there's a tree off to the left a little bit, which is fine because you never hit the ball left. If anything, that ball's going right. Next thing you know, smack dab in the middle of that tree, right?
Yeah,
Like,
pull it straight into it. Yeah,
yeah.
with you.
So, okay, great. We'll be on here for a while now. I want to wrap this thing up here. I hope everybody had fun listening to our first conversation about golf. And we didn't get too much into the Bitcoin side of things, but we definitely plan on relating how golf and Bitcoin go hand in hand, and from a mental standpoint, and also how to prepare for times of volatility, which can definitely happen out on the golf course. So, Matt, it's been great talking with you. Help us understand where people can get in touch with you first. And then also, I would like people to, in the chat area, when this comes out, to start writing questions for Matt on what's wrong with your golf game. What do you want to work on? What do you want to hear more about? And we'll dive into those concepts. And hopefully at the end of a series of a couple of hours, we'll have you swinging better and getting ready for swing and summer golf.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, guys, send those questions, whether it's, warm up related, things to do on the driving range before going out and playing, things that you can incorporate into your everyday routines or your fitness routines. And yeah, I would love to not necessarily do the Max Homa swing roast, but yeah, if you guys submit your swings via X, would love to comment on one or two and continue to grow in this community. So yeah, I'm on X. My handle is Early Bird Golf RX as like prescription. But yeah, Early Bird Golf Performance is my little business here. Early bird, about being outside, getting in the sun, seeing sunrises, really embracing nature, right? The true decentralized vehicle of life, right? Nature will tell you the truth every single time, whether you want to hear it or not. So I think that's a big factor of how I can relate to Bitcoin, to golf, and to nature, and how I think quality of life should be. I have a Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com, Early Bird Golf Performance, I've got a golf performance blog on there. I've covered, I think, I don't know, there's 30 or 40 different blog posts on there talking about posture, talking about breathing, talking about your golf power. I did a series about my off-season training of how I gained not only muscle mass, the workouts I did, but then looking at certain tests that you can test yourself at the gym to then correlate to golf power and golf swing speed. So I'm ready to talk to anyone about this stuff. Obviously, Chris and I, we've had a great conversation here, so let's keep it going, community.
Fantastic. And then as a final just shout out, we do have another golf tournament coming up in Dallas on April 3rd at the BitBlock Boom conference, which is a Bitcoin only conference, one of the only ones in the United States. It's the longest conference, Bitcoin run by a guy named Gary Leland. He's a great guy, and the conference is usually a lot of fun. We're going to be playing at Coyote Ridge Golf Club, which is about a 10-minute drive from where the conference is going to be taking place on that Thursday morning before the conference start. Again, that's April 3rd. We got 76 positions open. Tickets are selling now. It's going to be a lot of fun. We always give away great prizes, great awards. We're actually giving away Bitcoin for the first place prize. This year, it's a two-person team scramble, similar to all the tournaments that we do. We like the idea of golf, that it can be an individual, but also a team sport. And so in Bitcoin, nobody makes it to the finish line on their own. You always need some sort of moral support and support group to help you through the volatile times and to help give you the information that you need to help keep you in the trade, to keep you hodling through the times when prices go down, and actually probably buying the dips as well. On that topic, hope to see everybody out at BitBlock Boom in April. And with that, we'll say goodbye.